there. Happy Thursday, everyone. If you don't know, this is our last live stream of 2021. So next Thursday is the day before Christmas Eve, and so we will be off. The week after that is the week after Christmas, and we will be off. And so this is our last show until 2022 when we come back all re-energized and full of ideas and all the good stuff that happens when you get to actually take a break. So, on today's episode of So What, the Marketing Analytics and Insights Live Show, we're doing a part two of our Analytics Ask Me Anything. So, unsurprisingly, we had so many questions about analytics that we couldn't cover them all in one episode. So, we're doing a part two and continuing that into this week. If you have questions that you want to ask, feel free to ask us in the comments. Otherwise, you can definitely pop into our free Slack group, Analytics for Marketers, and join us there and ask us questions. John's pointing to the banner as Vanna does.
You have to do it in reverse though. It takes a little bit of work to get that.
And so I would initially oh, I finally got it right. So John's below me there, and Chris is over here.
We've got our Brady down.
Break. So Chris, as the only sane one, perhaps, where should we start with questions about analytics today?
Here's an easy one. We got it from Brian. What are our thoughts? What are your thoughts on Google Analytics 4 and guessing on how long we'll be able to keep using Google Analytics 3 since there's so many major things that can't be done in GA4 yet?
I would like to believe, and again, this is just speculation, but I would like to believe that we get at least another 18 to 24 months with Google Analytics 3, and that Google releases similar Academy classes that they did for Google Analytics 3 for Google Analytics 4 and gives people an opportunity to get skilled up. If the opposite happens and they just shut off Google Analytics 3 and say, hey, here's 4, then, to be not quite so nice, that's a dick move. That's how I feel about that.
John?
That actually is a fantastic question, really, because there's so many different ways it could go. I think, one thing that comes to mind is that there's really no incentive for them to shut it off and piss everybody off. There's no upside there. But what I could see happening, I think the big driver will be at some point there will be something in Google Ads that they'll say, well, if you want this data, you only get it in 4. It doesn't go in 3. And then there'll be a mass exodus at that point, because people need that, want the ad tracking and ROI on what their spend. And so that will force the lion's share of people over. And then, I can see them just leaving it on life support, like only half effective forever, just so that they never have to deal with the complaints of actually shutting it off.
Yeah. We saw the GA.js tracking script. Google announces retirement, and then I think it took 7 years for them to actually get around to turning it off. And the part that's important to remember is that the analytics.js script and Google Analytics 3 is a massive data collection mechanism that powers things like DoubleClick and Google Ads and stuff like that. So it's not going away anytime soon, because if Google were to simply turn it off, they would essentially be cutting off millions of websites from the data that the ad systems can calibrate on the back end. It's not perfect, but John, you've got it right, though, that they're already saying the new privacy-safe ad controls and the privacy-safe data will only be in Google Analytics 4. So if you want to maximize this, it's not even coming. It is the case today. If you want the best of the best, you've got to be using those two systems in concert. And the reason for that is they've changed the underlying model of how they measure things. It's events, top to bottom, in both systems. Okay, let's move on. This is a one from, we covered that one last week. Let's see. This is a good one. Hannah asks, what are the biggest mistakes you see people make when measuring content marketing performance?
So this is just one person's opinion. The biggest mistakes that I see is not having a clear purpose to your content marketing. And so a lot of times, and this is more of a broad stroke. A lot of times I see companies get swept up in what everybody else is doing versus really focusing on why they are doing content marketing in the first place. So for us, it's an awareness tool, it's an education tool, it's sometimes an engagement tool, and so we need to keep those things in mind as we're creating that content. And so we would measure on, scroll depth, we would measure on how many times the thing was shared, how many times it was viewed, et cetera, et cetera. So I feel like that's the biggest mistake, is not having a clear purpose for why you're doing content marketing in the first place. And it can be multi-layered. You can have different purposes, but you should have metrics, different metrics for each of those purposes.
Yeah, I think you hit that. The only mistake people make is not doing any tracking at all. There's orgs that throw stuff out there and it doesn't even have to be up front. Like, it's okay if you just throw it out there and sit around for 6 months, but at the end of 6 months, go back and look, and did it get downloaded? Did we get any clicks? At least get yes or no on it. Because yeah, I think the biggest mistake is people that just spray stuff out there and never even look back.
Yep. Yeah. There's so many things you can do with measurement wrong, but the obvious one is you forgot to set it up, or it's just not working. We are not blameless. When you look in our Google Analytics account and you look at the company's 3-year history, there are gaps every so often when a tracking script went missing or something. And that happens to everybody, but it gets bad when you go into, like, we've been in a couple of clients' Google Analytics accounts, and it just says, it's like June 2021, and then nothing. It's like flat line. It's like, well, and you say, what happened then? Like, oh, we updated the website. Like, did you? And you only notice now, 6 months later, that your analytics are not working. So what happened there? I think that's probably the other thing too, is you're measuring stuff, you're collecting the data for stuff, and then you just don't use it. Like, you got all this data and you never look at Google Analytics, and it takes you 6 months to realize it stopped working.
I mean, I think whether it's Google Analytics or any other system, collecting the data and then not doing anything with it's such a waste of everybody's time.
Yep, really is. Okay, next, Kathy asks, how do you choose which digital platforms and channels are best for each piece of content, especially when it comes to atomizing content? And it's related to a question Don asked, how do you know where to put the different types of content, like blog posts, ebooks, videos, etc.? So how do you make those decisions about where to put stuff?
Oh yeah, that's we do a lot of work on traction framework, like figuring out where stuff should go. But the short answer is, like, why not put it everywhere? I mean, I don't see any reason, nobody's going to complain about one more Twitter post or one more LinkedIn post. But it is up to you to know which channels are working best. And you can reach a point where, you decide that some channels just aren't even worth doing. In fact, yeah, I'd be interested in you guys too, as far as we've been working harder on Twitter for the past couple of weeks. And this has kind of made me think I'm wasting my time on that channel entirely. But yeah, go everywhere and then use your analytics to figure out where it should be.
I feel like it depends on what the purpose of the content is. And so, is it educational? Is it salesy? Is it awareness? And so aligning that with your digital customer journey of which channels fall into which of those buckets. And so maybe you save your original research for your newsletter. It's a little bit more exclusive because you don't want to use that as an awareness tool. But maybe the blog post that you wrote about what's coming with GA4 is more of an awareness, and that can go across all social. So I think I would say the couple of things are, what is the purpose of the content? Is it, sort of that hero hub help? Is it awareness? Is it educational? Whatever. And then aligning that with how your digital marketing falls into a customer journey.
Yeah, I like the approach that John mentioned. Put everything everywhere for 30 days and look at your data. Like, if you've put up all these different stories and images and movies and ebooks, and you find out that nobody on LinkedIn clicks on your videos, probably don't put videos on LinkedIn anymore. I mean, I would assume that would be fairly straightforward. The challenge there is you really should probably write down a testing plan.
Probably. I mean, that would be good.
That would be good. So a couple questions coming in live. This one's from Brian. GA4 has a setting to save historical data for 2 or 14 months. Do you think this is going to force people to learn BigQuery to store all the historical data? Will that remain free?
I have a lot of thoughts. I'm just trying to organize them in my head. I think that people will not learn BigQuery. They will panic. They will say, "Hey, what happened to my data?" And I think that's about how it's going to go.
BigQuery isn't free. I mean, that's I think the important thing is that you are billed for usage on it. So it is not free to begin with, and obviously, if you are running a site with millions of visitors a month, that could get very, very expensive very quickly. For us, like the bill we get from Google on a monthly basis for our BigQuery usage is something around like 2.5 to 3 cents a month. So we're not exactly endangering the company coffers, but it is definitely not free. But it is a good point, I think. And certainly when we set up GA4 for ourselves, we turned on that integration as quickly as we possibly could to make sure that we were capturing all the historical data. And we have another one from Brian, who's, I think, getting all of his content in for the end of the year here. How do you suggest content creators and entrepreneurs start using their content data to find insights? And can you quote you in a blog article? Okay, so you're on the record now. Say something good.
Dang it. The pressure's on, Brian. How do you suggest individual content creators and entrepreneurs start using their content data to find insights? Again, I always go back to the same starting place of what was the purpose of the content, from the get-go. And so, if you're using the Chris and John approach of posting it everywhere as a testing plan, I think that's a good place to start. Especially if you're, setting up a brand new content marketing plan, you can use the data from that test to figure out what content is working. How long should the content be? You can look at all of the best practices in the world, but until you do it for yourself, you won't really know what's working because your audience is going to be unique to just you. It's going to be comprised of people who are not necessarily in Chris's audience, who are not necessarily in John's audience or my audience. And so we're each going to have a different experience as we're posting our content. So I think the 30-day test plan is a great place to start. And then you can start pulling out insights. With that, I would say you definitely need to be creating different kinds of content, long form content, short form content, video content. So that way you're sort of testing a variety of things. You're not just putting out 6 blog posts for 30 days and saying, well, that didn't work.
Yep. John, what do you suggest?
Yeah, well, we've got our most valuable pages report is, classic canned data that we run. Take a look at what's actually working on the website, what's converting. I mean, that's the quickest and easiest way to get to stuff. And then, we have our digital customer journey reports too, if you want to take it further beyond just which pages on your site are doing action, but looking across the board at all of your programs. So yeah, this section of the program sponsored by Trust Insights, who can provide you with actionable data on most valuable pages or attribution. If you have data problems that last more than 4 hours, contact your physician or Trust Insights and DM me to learn more.
Wow. Okay, it's hard to follow.
Brian's going to quote you on that now.
That's it. We want to make the article. That's all. All links are good links.
The thing that a lot of people don't do is take into account what is in the content itself from the format. Like, is it an image? Is it a piece of text? Is it a video? And then the topics that it's about. Is it about analytics? Is it about machine learning? Is it about organizational change? And then doing some analysis. Even just in an Excel spreadsheet, just with your basic correlation function inside of Excel, to say, do any of these things matter? Right? Do any of these things matter specific to the audience that we're after? So I'll give you an example. This week, in our 12 Days of Data series, on day 4, we looked at TikTok's trending videos. What things, what were sort of the characteristics of trending videos, the things that the TikTok algorithm had selected to show users. And then we looked on day 5 at marketing videos. So videos with using the marketing and sales hashtags on TikTok. And on day 4, there was not a single unifying element of content that said this predicts trending, right? It wasn't a certain type of music or a certain theme or a certain hashtag. Really, there was no clear thing that said, yeah, this is what's going to cause something to trend. But on day 5, there was, right? So using, the digital marketing hashtag and stuff had a correlation to the video view counts. And so as we look at our data and as we're trying to figure out like what types of content resonate, we need to be doing that analysis. And you don't need to use machine learning for that. I mean, you can literally just, again, do it in an Excel spreadsheet, just count things by hand if necessary. It will take longer, but you can do it. And that will then tell you like there's specific types of content that are actually important, that the themes that resonate with the audience. And the other thing that, again, we really encourage people to do is talk to your audience. If you are just getting started out and you've only got like 2 or 3 super fans, folks like Brian who show up for a lot of the different content, talk to them, ask them, what do you want more of? What resonated? What landed for you? What didn't? Right? Hey, we just put up this blog post. Did anybody like it? And if everyone's like, it was okay, they were trying to be polite, it missed the mark. And you can say, okay, well, what would have made it better? What could we have done differently? What would be more valuable to you? When you're just getting started out, this is something that we hear a lot around, entrepreneurs and startups. Do things that don't scale. It's okay to, talk to a customer for half an hour. When you're the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation, it's a lot harder to talk to an individual customer. You won't ever talk to every customer one by one, but when you're just starting out, there's no harm in that because you may find a whole bunch of things that you didn't realize were actually the case. Okay. Next question in the pile. Alan asks, how do you tell which keyword searches drove to specific content?
Well, why don't you kick us off, Chris?
Okay. Let's do this. Actually, you know what? Let's do it in Data Studio. That'd be fun. Because Data Studio lets you actually do this. So let's go to Google Data Studio and connect to Search Console. So if you have not connected your Search Console account, you should, because it's important. Let's add in a table. I like tables with heat maps because colors are fun. And so Alan's asking, which keyword searches drove to specific content? Well, what specific content do we have? We have landing pages, right? We want to know what page did somebody come in on. And we have keywords, which is the query term. And we have our clicks. And so very quickly looking here, let's resize this to fit the data. And best practice, just slap a date control on here so that we can look over more periods of time. And let's choose this year to date. Let's see what happened in 2021, the little year that could. This query, this search term, Trust Insights, which maps to this landing page, got 591 clicks. IGTV Stats got 100 clicks and went to this post from last October. AI Project Lifecycle, 66 clicks went to this page. So in relatively short order, with a few clicks inside of Data Studio and your Search Console data, you can figure out exactly which keyword searches drove to which page. And if you want to get fancy, you can also add in the click-through rate to understand, we showed up a lot. Let's put the impressions in there as well. Now let's just resize this to make it fit nicely again. And so this term down here, IGTV Stats 2020, got 50% of the time when we showed up in search, we got the click for it, right? So we were very, very relevant for that. AI project cycle, we showed up 16,000 times. We got 66 clicks. So Google thinks we did the thing, but the customer doesn't. Google customer's like, I'm not going to click on this link. So that's what I would say is the easiest way to get at this particular information.
I don't think we could have a more solid answer than that.
How about, so that all comes through Search Console, right? Because none of that's available over on your GA, right? That's what we've lost over the past couple of years.
So yeah, you can turn on the Google Analytics integration, but we have seen cases where what comes into GA is not, it's not as flexible, right? So, and the same is true in the Search Console web interface itself. You can't put query and page together in the same report. You can look at queries, you can look at pages, but you can't put them side by side. And only when you're using the API can you do that, which is why you kind of have to do it in Data Studio. One fun thing that you can do, I like to sort by the different columns to see what we get the most impressions for, because impressions are, Google says you did a good job with this term, right? Clicks are, the user says you did a good job with this term. So I like to see, what does Google think we're doing a good job with, right? So what is data quality? This data quality here, Google says, good job. We think that this page is about data quality, and so we're going to show this page a lot in search. Google thinks we did okay with, a project lifecycle, Google Postmaster tools, and so on and so forth. So from an SEO perspective, from a technical perspective, we're doing okay. Then when we look at the click perspective, it's like, okay, well, not as good here. So obviously we have some work to do, and there are some things where clearly there's a mismatch. Like, is -1 elastic or inelastic, which is more computational stuff and not related to the marketing. Any other things you want to toss in on this?
I mean, I think it's interesting, you can answer questions like that so easily using the data that you already have. And then when you see things like, well, Google thinks we're doing well, but the people don't think we're doing well, just starting to think through how you bridge that gap of meeting the needs of Google so that your content is shown, and then meeting the needs of the consumer so that they're getting something out. And that's, the magic of really good content marketing.
It is, but the other thing that, again, a lot of marketers don't do this. We've been running it forever. We just forget to look at the data because, cobbler's kids have no shoes, is running on-site surveys, saying, there's the 4C survey that Google gives you in Google surveys, Google Webmaster Surveys, which is, it asks questions like, did you find what you were looking for today? Were you able to complete it? And so on and so forth, basic customer satisfaction stuff. And then it gives you a running score of is your site actually doing the thing that the user wanted to? And if your customer satisfaction scores are 0, then clearly, you've got an experience problem there in terms of content. And the other thing is just asking people. So when we do our 1-question surveys every quarter, we do like to ask people like, hey, what could we be doing more of or doing better, and so on and so forth. And it is always revelatory to go, oh, didn't think about that.
But it takes a lot of confidence and self-awareness to ask for that feedback, but not only ask for it, hear it, and then do something about it so that you kind of take your ego out of it to say, okay, just because I think that article that I spent, 6 days writing and tweaking and editing is amazing, nobody else does. Well, they're wrong and my content's right. That's not how that works. Because unless you're writing it for you and nobody else will ever see it, that is not how that works.
That is unfortunately true, and unfortunately, the hippo problem at work. The highest individually paid person's opinion in the room saying, no, this really is what the thing is. Very, very few people can actually do that. Like Steve Jobs was probably the only person who's ever successfully managed to pull that off. Okay. Just as an example, we can show this too. If you've not tried Google Surveys, when you deploy it, it costs you $0.01 per response, and that's not super bad. This is from my personal website, and people saying, "Are you how satisfied are you? What, if anything, do you find frustrating or unappealing? What's your main reason? And did you were you able to complete it?" So again, this is stuff the questions are already baked. You don't have to do anything to make this work. You just install the widget inside of Google Tag Manager, let it do its thing, and then you come back and go, well, either our site's doing the job or the site's not doing the job. Okay, next one from Allison. We are legit starting from scratch. What analytics resources would you recommend for someone who's brand new to learn from just to get up to speed on digital marketing analytics?
Hmm.
This
That's
is
a
where I
big
should have
question.
a page from our website that rattles off my tongue, and I don't. That's a fail for me right here.
I think that's a tough question because, you know, the basics of digital marketing, I mean, you could go on forever. It really depends. Are you trying to just understand the landscape? Are you specializing in one of the channels? But, I think, sort of our tried and true is, the Google Analytics Academy is a great place to start because it gives you the foundation of tracking your website. And so these days, very few companies don't have a website, and you need to be able to track who's coming in, what they're doing on the site. And Google Analytics Academy gives you a really good foundation for what to expect, how to set it up, how to think about the data. So I'd say that's a great place to start. I also really like HubSpot Academy because it gives you a wide variety of topics that you can cover. And so you can kind of pick and choose. And, the courses themselves, they're not long. So you can get through, quite a few of them. They're on email marketing, CRM, lead magnets. They're a really good resource for covering the broad spectrum of digital marketing. So I would say those, if you had nothing else to start with, those would be two really good places to start.
Yeah, I think that's solid advice. Other thing is read, some of the industry blogs and stuff. There's some decent blogs out there that do a good job. Simo Ahava's blog, if you want to learn Tag Manager, like he is the guy to follow on all things Tag Manager. His content is fantastic. Sometimes it gets very, very technical, so be aware of that. There's usually good marketing and analytics content. What used to be called Marketing Land, I believe, is now martech.org. Scott Brinker's blog, Chief Martech, also has some interesting stuff from time to time. And selfishly, if you're not part of the Trust Insights Analytics for Marketers Slack group, it's free. Pop on over there, and you can have conversations and ask a lot of these. Thanks, Matt. A lot of these questions to other folks and see what stuff other people are following. But yeah, there are definitely analytics specific content for individual channels. One of the hidden secrets that I think is useful are developer blogs. When you read like Facebook's developer blog or Twitter's developer blog, you can get a sense of what the back end folks are working on. If you're interested in search and how search works, Google's got a huge amount of content around search. There's Search Off the Record podcast is phenomenal. And so there's so much good analytics content out there. It's more a question, can you find the time to consume it all?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Dawn asks, is there a reason my Facebook analytics tracking is so wildly different than my Google analytics tracking for the exact same post?
The short answer is yes. The longer answer is Facebook and Google are in a lot of ways rival companies. And so if you think about it from that standpoint, Facebook is not necessarily going to share all of its data with Google and vice versa. And so this is actually one of my clients is a roster of ads managers, and they have their own set of clients. And this is a question that comes up a lot. And so to get down to sort of like some of the technical things, depending on how your ads are set up, the tracking might be stripped off of your URLs and not passed to Google correctly. Making sure that you're adding your UTM tracking, but then shortening the links so that you can preserve the quality of the link and the tracking information. That's just sort of one thing that I'm aware of. But in general, the not so diplomatic answer is that Facebook and Google don't get along. So their systems, quite honestly, are incompatible. And so the information, Facebook is always going to make itself look better. And it's going to say, okay, Google, I'll give you my table scraps of what I think you're allowed to have. So that way I can keep people coming back natively to my platform so that they can only get their data from me. And that's the not technical answer.
Have you seen stuff change as far as with the clients that you're working with? The rule of thumb that I've always gone with that we've heard echoed is, if you're within 20%, you're doing well. Like that's the most you can expect, because it's just, everybody wants themselves to look great. So surprisingly, each platform, looks better in their own analytics, which is the way it is. But
yeah, I mean, I can understand the frustration because theoretically the data should be the data should be the data, and it shouldn't vary from platform to platform. But because you're passing data from one platform to another that is just not compatible, then you're going to lose some of that data in the transition. It's going to say, this is the data that I want you to see. I want to give you just enough to feel like you're doing something, but really come back to us. We're the only ones who can give you the full picture.
Yep. The other thing that is at play, especially on mobile devices, is who's blocked.
Mhm.
So Facebook, as of now one entire iteration of Apple's iOS operating system, Facebook's tracking pixel is blocked on a substantial number of iPhones, to the point where you can't tell whether a conversion happened. And Facebook has tried to build some workarounds, but they are very technical workarounds that a lot of people, frankly, just are not willing to do. And so, yeah, your data is probably going to be way off and get even worse off as time goes by. If you want to spend some time trying to resolve this to some degree, you can implement what's called server-side tracking. This is a fairly complex thing to do. You could do it in Google Tag Manager. You can also do it with Facebook. Facebook now calls it Conversions API. And it can try and unify some of that data. But yeah, at the end of the day, the only reliable number you have is how much money somebody actually spent. Like once it hits your bank account, that's when you know that the results are good. Because we have seen cases where Google Analytics has said, hey, this page had no traffic, and yet that's the conversion page, and there's money in the bank. So it's like, okay, well,
Mhm.
I'll take the money. All right. And let's do one more here. Drew asks an interesting one. How do we know if we are attracting the right target audience in the B2B world by looking at our analytics?
Well, I think it depends on what you're collecting. So if you're just purely looking at website traffic, you may not be able to tell if it's the right audience or not. You can look at the sources that they're coming from, but again, that's not going to give you a whole lot of information. And so for this one, I would say definitely you need the support from your CRM, and your CRM needs to be set up in such a way that you're collecting demographic information that you care about. So just sort of like a little bit of a, side rant. I used to work for a company that had a 4-page contact form. And this, as the person who was not the decision maker at the time, it made me crazy because the completion rate was so low for this page. And they were not making decisions with every single data point on that contact form. So that's sort of my little side rant, is only collect data that you will be making decisions with. And so I would say that's really going to be your best bet for understanding, are you attracting the right kind of audience? And so, maybe you care about industry, maybe you care about role and title and level. Then make sure you're collecting that information on your forms into your CRM so that you can look at that and go, okay, our ideal customer is comprised of this, and these are the types of people that we are attracting. So where's the gap, or where's the mismatch? So that would be my advice on that particular thing.
John?
Yeah, CRM is definitely a much better take. And yeah, bless you for saying that about contact forms. It's just, if I had $1 for like every CRM field that, you go back 3 years later and they're empty, it's just horrifying. But yeah, I'd have to echo with that, because there's just not enough in web analytics now to know. You really have to go further down the chain to conversions or appointments set or something like that, because that's the only way to get that more detailed info. And it's so tough for B2B because you tend to be shooting at such a limited universe of contacts. And again, CRM could give you interesting stuff like it. Well, not as much now that with so much work from home, but it used to be you could be able to pick out which companies were banging on the website because the IP addresses were mapped in the CRM system, stuff like that. And again, a lot of that stuff has now failed. But yeah, that's beyond just web analytics.
One of the things that I think is a caution there for Drew is you assuming that you know what the target audience is, because even for B2B, the buyer may not necessarily be the buyer you think. The classic example is with account-based marketing, right? Where you say, we're targeting CEOs of these companies. Well, the CEO is not the one putting together the vendor list. That's the intern, right? So even though someone's title might be, intern, marketing intern, they may be the one who has to put together the short list of vendors. And if you influence that person, by default, you have influenced the rest of the process. So to what Katie was saying, make sure you're looking in your CRM, but also look at your data and make sure that what you think is your target audience is in fact actually the target audience of people who buy, or at least the people whose sales says, yes, this is a sales qualified lead. We are happy to receive it from you. Marketing, here's a cookie.
Well, and so there's a prequel, if you want to call it, to looking in your CRM and collecting that data. And that is that market research of talking with people. If I created this thing, would this solve your problem? What problems are you having, so that I can try to, create something that will help you? And then, collecting information from them about like, who are you? What do you do? What does your day look like? So there's an upfront market research, customer research piece that goes ahead of setting up those forms on your website to collect that demographic information. Because Chris' point, if you don't know who that target audience is and you're letting the data just kind of inform you, there may be a mismatch of, well, we thought we were selling to, B2B in this vertical, but really we're a B2C company. Whoopsie.
Exactly. So we'll close out with a question that's not on the list here, but I think is a fun one to close out the last show of the year, which is, Katie, what are you looking forward to in the year to come?
I mean, that's such a loaded question. More sleep, better coffee. I don't know. No, what I'm looking forward to in the year to come is really getting an opportunity to focus in on the value propositions of Trust Insights. And so using our existing data, reaching out to our Slack community and our customers to really make sure that we're not only solving their existing problems, but trying to get ahead of future problems. And so, when more people are bringing AI into their organization, it opens up a new can of worms. It opens up a whole bunch of new problems that we want to be prepared to solve. So I really like that piece of it. So that's what I'm looking forward to, is really, revising and re-energizing our values, our value propositions, I should say. Our values were good. We know who we are. More of our value propositions.
John, what about you? What are you looking forward to in the year to come?
Yeah, March 3rd, I'll be at the TD North Center with Belle Biv DeVoe, New Edition, Bobby Brown, Charlie Wilson, and Jodeci for an evening of old school 80s R&B.
Dude, I am not holding my breath for all of those people to be on stage.
That's half the fun, is will they make it? That's like 15 dates into the tour. Yeah, I would be astounded if it's the original roster within weeks. But yeah, sadly, that's the only thing I have on the list, because I'm one of these people too. I don't know how many other people can relate to this, but it's like I'm giving so much, like making it to that last day before year-end wrap-up and everything. Like I literally have no idea even what I'm going to do next week. Never mind like what I'm looking forward to for next year. I literally will have to take next week and set a day aside to like make a map, do the annual plan of like, okay, what do I want to happen next year? On the short list, I would love it if we get to a point where live events do come back. It would be great if we could, both on the social side of concerts and things like that, but also on the business side of being able to, meet with some of the folks we haven't seen in a couple of years that we normally have dinner with after events and stuff like that, where we can, and especially because that's where a lot of the real learning comes from in these conferences and trade events. Like you really don't learn. We've proven that, Zoom meetings are not the way to learn about what's going on in the industry. In fact, they're even a challenge to staying awake most of the time. So yeah, but that's where I'm at. Yeah, and I hope everybody has a great and safe, happy holiday, and get recharged and ready for 2022.
Exactly.
What are you looking forward to, Chris?
Publishing a new work. I'm not sure if it's going to be a paper or a book yet. It's about 30,000 words on private social media community. It's going to be talking about that actually at the Marketing Profs B2B Forum in the fall of next year in Boston, in person, conditions permitting. One of my goals this year was to get better at Adobe Creative Cloud, and I'm just finishing up, going through a lot of the tutorials and stuff on like After Effects and stuff. And so I'm looking forward to putting some of that knowledge to use for the business and for marketing next year, of trying new and different ways of making content. We just upgraded machines, so we now have this absurd like Death Star of a laptop to work on, and so I would like to see what interesting kinds of content we can create with all these new capabilities. The tools are there, the ingredients are there. Just gotta get the chef skilled up here.
I thought you were going to say I have this new machine, so I want to see how long it takes before I can break it.
No, I'm gonna try to take good care of it. But that's what I'm looking forward to next year, is more creative stuff to go along with a lot of the heavier machine learning stuff, and new book, new stuff to share with folks.
That's why we buy Apple Care.
Well, thanks to everyone who has watched and listened and commented and joined our communities and stuff over the past year. 2021 would not have been the year it was without you. So we thank you for that. And we hope you do have a great, safe, healthy holiday season. And we will see you in the first week of January. Take care. Thanks for watching today. Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you're watching it. For more resources and to learn more, check out the Trust Insights podcast at trustinsights.ai/TI podcast, and a weekly email newsletter at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. Got questions about what you saw in today's episode? Join our free Analytics for Marketers Slack group at trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. See you next time.